All right, so we're ready to jump into this deep dive.
Yeah, let's do it.
Today, we're tackling Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
Oh, yeah, this'll be good.
It really digs into some big questions.
Morality, meaning, how to live a good life, that sort of thing.
Exactly, and I think what's really interesting about Peterson,
Yeah.
he doesn't shy away from the complexities of life.
Right. He embraces them.
Yeah, and he makes it all surprisingly relatable.
Oh, absolutely. Even when he's
Yeah.
using lobsters to explain human behavior.
Right, lobsters. I mean, who would have thought?
It sounds a little crazy at first.
Yeah.
But trust me on this one.
Okay.
There are some really fascinating insights there.
Okay, so let's start with one of Peterson's core arguments.
Okay.
His challenge to the idea of relative morality.
Mm-hmm.
He argues that it leaves young people kind of adrift.
Without a solid foundation.
Yeah, without a compass.
Exactly.
He even tells this story about a dinner party he went to.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
With all these academics, and they're just tossing around these deep philosophical questions.
Like it's casual conversation?
Yeah, like it's small talk. And he's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think that anecdote really highlights Peterson's concern.
Oh, totally.
It's not that he's against intellectual debate,
Right.
but he worries that without a shared moral framework, we become vulnerable to ideologues.
With their simplistic answers.
Exactly, and those answers can be dangerous.
Yeah, so it's not just an abstract philosophical debate.
No, it's about real-world consequences.
Yeah, and this leads to another one of Peterson's key points.
Shared beliefs.
Right. He says these systems, even though they're not always perfect.
Right. They can be flawed for sure.
Yeah, they're essential for social order.
And cooperation.
How so?
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
Shared beliefs, they create a set of predictable behaviors.
Okay.
It's like a map for navigating social interactions.
Okay, I can see that.
Like, for example, if we all agree that stealing is wrong, that creates a level of trust within a community.
Okay, so these shared beliefs simplify the world in a way.
Yeah, exactly. They make it easier to understand each other.
To interact, to cooperate.
Exactly. And even though these systems can be rigid sometimes,
Yeah, for sure.
Peterson argues that they provide a necessary foundation for a functioning society.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Now, something that really resonated with me was Peterson's concept of maps of meaning.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's about how we try to make sense of the unknown.
Create order from chaos.
Exactly, and I think that's something everyone can relate to.
Absolutely. Regardless of who you are, where you come from,
We all face uncertainty.
we all have to figure out how to navigate life's challenges.
So these maps of meaning are like personal frameworks that help us along the way.
They're kind of like our own personal guidebooks.
But they're not static, right?
No, they're constantly evolving.
As we learn and grow.
Exactly. Our maps are shaped by our experiences, our values,
Our struggles.
our relationships, everything.
So it's an ongoing process.
It is. And Peterson encourages us to be mindful of those maps.
To revise them as we go.
To be open to new information and new perspectives.
Okay, now for the part that I was initially a little skeptical about.
The lobsters.
Yeah, the lobsters.
Yeah.
What can we possibly learn from lobsters?
More than you might think.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Peterson uses lobsters to illustrate dominance hierarchies.
Okay.
And these hierarchies exist in both lobster and human societies.
So you're saying we're all just lobsters in a bigger tank?
No, not exactly.
Okay.
But there are some interesting parallels.
Okay, like what?
Well, lobsters, they compete for resources,
Yeah.
for social status.
Just like us.
Exactly. And their position in the hierarchy, it influences their behavior,
Okay.
their brain chemistry,
Really?
even their physical appearance.
A lobster's social status affects its brain.
It does. It's fascinating.
That's wild.
Peterson highlights this one study where they found that defeated lobsters, their brains actually undergo significant changes.
Like what kind of changes?
Well, essentially, their brains kind of dissolve and then regrow
Wow.
in a way that's adapted to their new subordinate position.
So it's not just a subtle shift.
No, it's a dramatic transformation.
Wow. And while humans don't experience such radical physical changes,
For
our psychology is definitely affected by our wins and losses.
Oh, absolutely. Think about a time you've experienced a major setback. It affects your confidence, your motivation, and your outlook on life.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to shake off.
It is. But just as lobsters can recover and adapt, so can we.
Okay, that's good to know. It makes me wonder if there's something we can learn from the lobsters at the top of the hierarchy.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
And it leads us to another concept that Peterson introduces.
Okay, what's that?
Price's Law.
Price's Law. I've never heard of it.
It basically states that in many fields,
Okay.
a small number of individuals are responsible for a disproportionate amount of the output.
So like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Yeah. Similar, but Price's law is even more extreme. It's more like the square root of the number of people.
Okay, so if you have 100 people working on something,
Yeah,
only about 10 of them will produce half the results.
exactly.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. It makes you think about those high achievers in any field.
What sets them apart
Right. And it also makes you think about where you fit in.
in that distribution?
Exactly.
So we've gone from relative morality to shared beliefs
To lobsters.
to Price's law. It's fascinating how Peterson connects these seemingly unrelated ideas.
He's a master at weaving together different disciplines and perspectives.
And speaking of connections, Peterson also delves into the nature of nature itself.
Oh, yeah. He describes it as both static and dynamic.
Right, he uses the Taoist concept of yin and yang to illustrate that.
Chaos and order.
Light and dark.
Feminine and masculine.
All these complementary forces.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah, and Peterson argues that nature embodies this balance.
Some aspects of nature change rapidly, while others remain relatively stable.
Yeah, like leaves change quickly, trees more slowly.
Forests even more slowly.
It's like nature has its own rhythm.
Its own dance between stability and change.
And that interplay is crucial for evolution.
Exactly. If everything changed at the same rate, adaptation would be impossible.
That makes sense.
Mm.
And it makes me think about how we as humans,
Respond to change.
right, because we're part of nature too.
We are, and that leads to another analogy that Peterson uses,
Okay.
the microphone feedback loop.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this feedback loop.
Have you ever been at a concert
Yeah.
and suddenly there's that ear-splitting feedback from the microphone?
Oh yeah, it's so jarring.
It just keeps getting louder and louder.
Awful.
And Peterson argues that we can experience similar feedback loops within ourselves.
So our internal world can get stuck in that same kind of loop.
Exactly. And it can manifest as stress or even addiction.
What kind of things trigger these internal feedback loops?
It can be a variety of things. A stressful experience, a traumatic event, even our own negative thoughts.
Can you give me an example of how this might play out in real life?
Sure, Peterson describes a scenario where someone has a stressful experience at a shopping mall,
Right.
and it triggers a feedback loop that leads to agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia, the fear of open spaces.
Exactly.
So even a relatively minor incident
Yeah.
can spiral out of control.
If you get caught in that feedback loop,
That's scary.
it is, and it highlights the importance of understanding these loops.
And learning how to manage them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so recognizing those feedback
That's
loops.
crucial, yeah.
But how do we actually break free?
Well, that's where Peterson's ideas about assertiveness come in.
Assertiveness.
Yeah, setting boundaries.
Okay.
He argues that people are often targeted or bullied because they haven't learned to stand up for themselves.
So it's like sending a signal that you're okay with bad behavior.
Exactly, you're not pushing back.
Interesting.
He even tells a story about intervening when a child was bullying his daughter.
Oh, wow, on a playground or something.
Yeah, on a playground.
I'm guessing he didn't just stand there and watch.
No, he actually picked the bully up and removed him from the situation.
Wow. So direct action.
Direct action. Yeah, he emphasizes that.
But doesn't that kind of contradict the idea of being compassionate?
Well, it's not about aggression for its own sake.
Okay.
Peterson believes we have a moral obligation to defend ourselves.
And others.
Yeah, to set boundaries.
To communicate what we will and will not tolerate.
Exactly. It's about strength and compassion.
Finding that balance.
Exactly.
It's tough though, right?
It is. It takes courage.
Yeah, for sure. This leads to another one of Peterson's rules.
Discipline.
Right, the necessity of discipline.
This is a big one.
Yeah. And it seems to be where his ideas spark a lot of debate.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Some people think he's too strict.
Especially when it comes to child rearing.
Right. But if you look closely at what he's saying,
Mm-hmm.
he's really emphasizing consistency,
Okay.
setting clear expectations for kids.
So it's more about creating a structured environment.
Exactly where children know what's expected of them.
Okay, so less about punishment, more about guidance.
Right. And he even shares an anecdote about disciplining his own son.
Who was a bit of a handful?
A bit of a handful, yeah.
Toddlers are tough.
They are. And he highlights the importance of following through.
Not giving in to tantrums.
Exactly. Being consistent.
So being a steady, reliable force in the child's life.
Yeah. And he believes that ultimately,
Mhm.
this approach leads to happier, more well-adjusted kids.
Okay, I can see that. It makes me wonder how much responsibility we have.
As parents,
Yeah, as individuals.
for shaping the future.
That's a big question.
It is a huge question,
Hmm.
and Peterson seems to suggest
Yeah.
that we have a lot more responsibility than we often acknowledge.
Okay, so where do we start?
It starts with taking responsibility for ourselves,
Okay.
cultivating our own character, becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Okay, that makes sense. And that actually reminds me of another theme in Peterson's work.
Truth-telling.
Yes, the power of honesty.
He puts a lot of emphasis on that.
He does. Why is that?
He argues that even small lies,
Mm,
they erode trust,
okay.
and that makes it difficult to build meaningful relationships.
So it's not just about being morally upright,
No, it's about the practical consequences.
of dishonesty.
Exactly.
I could see that.
He brings up Dostoevsky's Underground Man.
Oh, yeah, I remember that character.
This is a life of deception.
Yeah, and ends up totally miserable.
Isolated, miserable,
Yeah,
a cautionary tale.
definitely. On the flip side,
Yeah.
Peterson tells a story about working with a client who was paranoid.
Oh, yeah, very difficult client.
But Peterson was just relentlessly honest with him.
And eventually, the
Yeah.
client opened up.
So even in tough situations, honesty can be the key.
It can be the key to building trust.
Okay, I'm convinced honesty is important.
Okay.
So we've talked about morality,
Meaning that you give
monsters,
them the blood.
honesty. Now it's time to address a tougher topic,
Yeah.
suffering.
The problem of suffering.
Peterson doesn't shy away from that reality, does he?
No, he doesn't. He draws from his own experiences.
Right. His daughter's chronic illness.
Exactly.
I can't imagine how difficult that must have been.
Undoubtedly challenging. Yeah.
But what's important, I think,
Yeah.
is that Peterson doesn't offer easy answers.
No latitude.
He acknowledges the pain,
The rawness of suffering.
the fact that life can be unfair.
Absolutely.
So it's about acknowledging that darkness,
Yeah, facing it head on.
not trying to sugarcoat it.
Exactly. He delves into the story of Job.
From the Bible,
Yeah. Who loses everything.
and yet refuses to curse God.
Powerful story.
It is, and one that's resonated with people for centuries.
It has. And Peterson argues that confronting suffering directly is more courageous
Then becoming resentful.
than letting bitterness consume you.
It's like choosing to face the storm.
Yeah, rather than letting it sweep you away.
Powerful image. And this leads us to another big question.
Yeah.
What is meaning?
And where do we find it?
Especially in the face of suffering.
That's the ultimate question, isn't it?
It feels like it,
Peterson suggests that meaning is found in that balance.
between chaos and order.
Exactly. In the striving to improve being itself.
So it's not about achieving some perfect state.
No, it's about the journey.
The ongoing process of growth and transformation.
Exactly. Life is inherently challenging,
Right.
and meaning is found in engaging with those challenges.
And trying to make things a little better,
A little more ordered.
finding purpose in the struggle.
Yes. And he urges us to find something that gives our lives purpose.
Something worth fighting for.
Some
That makes us say, this matters.
That reminds me of his idea of the pen of light, writing words on our souls.
What did he mean by that?
Yeah, what was that all about?
Well, the pen of light is a metaphor
Okay.
for the values that guide us.
The principles we live by.
Exactly. It's about asking ourselves, what words do I want inscribed on my soul?
What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Exactly. It's a call to live a life of meaning and purpose.
Yeah, that pen of light. It's a powerful image.
It really is.
It makes you think about the choices we make every day, you know?
It does. Are we living in alignment with the words we want on our soul?
Right. And it's not just about those big, life-altering decisions.
Yeah.
It's about the small, everyday choices, too.
Absolutely. The little acts of kindness,
The moments of courage.
all of it contributes to the kind of world we're creating.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've covered so much ground,
We have.
from Peterson's critique of relative morality,
To shared beliefs,
those lobster analogies,
disciplined truth-telling,
the problem of suffering.
the search for meaning.
It's all connected somehow.
It is, and it all circles back to this idea of personal responsibility.
Taking ownership of our lives.
Becoming the authors of our own stories.
Striving for something bigger than ourselves.
It's a reminder that we're not just passive passengers.
Right. We have the power to shape our own destinies.
To influence the world around us.
Yeah. As we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
Remember that pen of light.
Yeah.
If you had that pen in your hand right now, what words would you inscribe on your soul?
What legacy do you want to leave behind?
What's the most meaningful thing you can do today?
To make the world a little better.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure
We hope you've surfaced with some new insights.
and a renewed sense of purpose.
Until next time, keep diving.